Foxcatcher features three of the finest acting performances you'll see this year. By Steve Carell, a physical transformation as multimillionaire crazy man John DuPont, and by Mark Ruffalo and Channing Tatum as Olympic wrestlers Dave and Mark Schultz. Hi, I'm Jeff Baker from The Oregonian. This is Mark Mohan. Foxcatcher is the big movie opening this Friday, December 19th in Portland. Mark, what did you think of the movie?
I enjoyed it. I thought they were some very good performances. I'm not sure that I would rank them as among the best of the year, but it's a great instance of two performers in particular, Steve Carell and Channing Tatum, stretching beyond what we think of them as normally doing and really showing off some chops that we didn't suspect they had, perhaps.
Couldn't agree more. The physical performances by Tatum and Ruffalo as these wrestlers, Tatum in particular handled the physical stuff, but also there's a real emotional depth to this character, Mark Schultz, who was a two-time Olympian, world champion, but lived in the shadow of his older brother Dave, the character played by Ruffalo. The Schultz brothers, by the way, did spend some time in Southern Oregon growing up, but most of their high school and college wrestling was done elsewhere in California and in Oklahoma. But by the time the movie opens, they had won the Olympics, but Mark in particular was at loose ends and was vulnerable to the manipulations of this man DuPont, who was a direct heir of the DuPont chemical fortune, wanted really to buy his way into wrestling and invited, sort of cajoled Mark Schultz into staying on his Foxcatcher farm and founding a wrestling team there. Things did not go well. Pick up the story, Mark.
Well, it's interesting, and I don't think you want to give too much of it away, but it is a fascinating piece of sort of recent true history, crime history, I guess, not to reveal too much. And it's based on a memoir by Mark Schultz. Is that correct?
That is. There's a little bit of the movie did come before the book. Mark Schultz sold his life story to these producers. We should give props to the director Bennett Miller, who two previous movies were Capote and Moneyball, the baseball movie starring Brad Pitt as Billy Beane. Both of them also featured fine acting. So Miller, who came from a documentary background, can really direct actors.
Yeah, and you mentioned Brad Pitt in Moneyball, and that I think is a good corollary for Channing Tatum in this movie. Both are actors who often don't get enough credit because they have the terrible luck to be incredibly handsome, hunky guys. And I think that Bennett Miller clearly is able to draw out performances from them that they're capable of.
Mark, I know you had a little problem with the pacing of this movie, and I did too. It definitely unfolds slowly. It's elliptical in some scenes, but I found myself, before I wrote the review, coming back to it, and I think some of that is haunting, and it worked for me.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a bad film in any sense. I think that it does have some issues with the pacing. I think, too, the performances, as good as they are, sometimes rely a little too much on the physical tics of the characters, even though it's impressive how Channing Tatum gets into that wrestler's mode and posture. Steve Carell has this very obvious prosthetic nose that, to me, was somewhat distracting, I have to say.
Certainly Bennett Miller in Foxcatcher, and also I think in Moneyball, is making some points about wealth and society in America and the haves and have-nots, whether it plays out in really an enclosed industry like baseball or in a larger class-conscious sense in America, where Steve Carell is really a member of the American aristocracy, this DuPont family, and then these brothers who came from very humble beginnings, worked their way to the very top of a sport that doesn't get much government or private support, and really had to rely on this man who they found repugnant.
So they're not just movies about sports?
No, they're not. Absolutely not. speaking of another movie that's not about sports, you saw Annie.
Yes, excellent segue. I did see Annie, and I would rather have been pinned to the mat by an Olympic wrestler, I think, than sit through this misbegotten remake of what is a pretty charming original Broadway musical turned into a John Huston movie 20-some years ago. The less said about it, the better. Don't be seduced by the advertisements or the admittedly cute and magnetic star of the film. It's really a waste of time.
And when you say cute magnetic star, you're not referring to Cameron Diaz.
I'm not referring to Cameron Diaz. I'm referring to Kuvanjane Wallace, and I sure hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly because it is a challenge.
But we hear from our online people that Annie is trending well.
Yes, well, everyone Schadenfreude is a universal trait, I guess.
As far as upcoming movies, Christmas is -1 movie, as we know. The Seth Rogen, James Franco movie, The Interview, was canceled by Sony.
Yeah, I didn't have to go see that, which was the one silver lining to that debacle, in my opinion.
Other thoughts on that?
On the Interview scandal, I have, I think, fairly strong opinions about it, as many people do. I think that, and I'm willing to go on record as saying, I think it was a pretty cowardly thing to pull this movie, whether it's a piece of garbage or not. I think it sets a terrible precedent.
I think the whole thing going back to the hacking, which as of this morning, is the U.S. government has confirmed North Korea is responsible. I think the hacking scandal aspect of it was underplayed, the seriousness of it, and was mischaracterized as, like, look at these salacious things in these documents, instead of treating it somewhat like when the Jennifer Lawrence and these other women had their nude photos posted on the internet. People were like, well, that's it's a crime and a violation and stuff. In a different sense, the Sony internal business documents, same thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, people have privacy rights, whether they're people that we like or they're people that we think are slimy corporate executives. They still have rights, and they still have rights to release movies, whether they're terrible movies or good movies. And I'm a little bit disturbed by some voices I've seen, saying that the makers of The Interview got what they deserved by making a movie that was in bad taste or that was stupid. And I just think those people don't get it.
Right, and I'll if you're speaking up for the right of Rogen and Franco to make a stupid stoner remake, which is basically Pineapple Express goes to North Korea.
Right.
I'll speak up a little bit for the right of movie executives to have candid conversations among themselves about what might or might not work and which actor might or might not work in a movie.
Right.
That's their business.
Yeah, and I think there will be a chilling effect on their conversations and on the movies they make for quite some time to come.
And I would say chilling effect and heads up for every business and every private individual in America, that if North Korea was able to pull off this kind of a hack on this kind of a major scale, what kind of privacy does any company have from internet security?
I think there are some Facebook posts I need to take down.
Well, we'll get on that right after this video. And finally, let's run down the Christmas movies coming up. I think we've seen most of them. Between us, Imitation Game,
Yep.
thumbs up.
Very good. Yes.
Unbroken, I saw it, was not charmed.
But was it broken?
Well, it needs some fixing.
There.
What else?
I saw Big
you
Eyes,
saw Big
which
Eyes.
is the Tim Burton movie about the big-eyed paintings, the Keane paintings, which was fairly interesting. Good period detail. Nice to see him a little more restrained than usual, but nothing earth-shattering.
What's left on the Christmas dock?
What's left on Into the Woods, which is the star-studded Stephen Sondheim play, finally gets made into a movie and turns out to be surprisingly enjoyable. Meryl Streep, of course, is great. And then some of the lesser-known stars, James Corden is very good as well. I think people should like it. That's the family musical to go see this holiday season.
Right. So the tagline is Into the Woods. It's no Annie.
Right.
And on that happy note, happy holidays, everyone. And as our president said, it's safe to go to the movies.
Indeed.